Today we're looking at Diamine's Burnt Sienna. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, Diamine's Burnt Sienna is kind of a red-brown ink. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then put the ink into a different pen for a day. I then put it into a Pier Cardin President with a medium nib to take my notes for this video. Now, before we get to the writing samples, let's look at the sciencey bits. And up first is a chromatography, and I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done, and we see that it starts creeping up, and it's got this kind of peach at the bottom left behind. It turns to a pink and then a light red with a dark brown line at the top. The one on the right I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. And the difference we see is the line at the bottom, we see a much darker than the original chromatography line across the bottom. It then goes into a pink, so there's no peach area. It then moves to the red. There's some yellow spots that come through, and then that brown is there. So I don't think it's going to be any kind of resilient, but there is a difference if it's given some time. Resistance tests are done to see how well this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean out of your pen. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. When we look at the highlighter, we see that this ink does not like being reactivated at all. The highlighter completely destroyed what was written. So do not use this as a note taker if you might need to highlight. Now the water, as expected, completely reactivated and pulled all this ink off the page, and in only 30 seconds, the only thing left is a little bit of that pink. Pen Flush did as expected, reactivated, pulled almost all of it off the page, leaving just the pink behind, but I really think it's just the water that would be needed. Bleach, expected results, completely obliterating it, leaving just a white circle behind. Now, for the inks I've tested, I've found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Diamine's Burnt Sienna has a viscosity of 2.21, which makes it a very normal flowing ink. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done with the extra fine and medium nib on Clairefontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. I average those. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Diamine's Burnt Sienna has an average dry time of 19 seconds, making it very normal, not just in viscosity, but also dry time. Now, let's look at that writing sample. I got this ink in sample form, and to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's look at Clairefontaine. We get no bleeding and no ghosting. With the 1.1, we have no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. We definitely get shading. We get very nice shading the whole way through. This sienna leans a little red for me, but we get nice shading with it. Extra fine, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, tons of shading. Does very well with this paper. We get shading all over it in individual words where it gets to go from light to dark, all in the same word, which is fantastic. 14 seconds to dry. Medium gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, shade, all the way through in every word. It stands out in its performance of shade. 18 seconds to dry. The scrubby doesn't show nearly the shading that we get in the writing. The scrubby lies to us. It doesn't show a lot of shading in the extra fine or in the medium, but it came through in both writing samples. I believe, looking at the smear, that you could recover it. Tomoe River, we have no bleeding. We do have ghosting. With the with the 1.1, we have no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. Lighter tone, extra fine. No feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and no shading. We lose it. 20 seconds this sat there.
Medium, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. We do have spots with some shading. Spots. We see it a little bit with the quick. We see it a little bit in the brown and a little bit in the fox, but that's about it. Top of the dog. 26 seconds to dry. The scrubby shows us the extra fine does not have color variation. The scrubby shows us in the medium no color variation, although we had spots of light in the writing. The smear says you're not allowed to recover this. Rhodia paper, no bleeding, no ghosting. With the 1.1, we have no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. We do get shading. So this is a great shading ink. And I just don't care for this tone of sienna. It's a shame, because it shades fantastic. We get shading through the 1.1. Extra fine has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and shading. All the way through shading. 16 seconds to dry. Medium. Medium has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and shading. We get shading through and quick, where it goes dark, light, and dark. The fox, where the F in fox is dark at the top, dark at the bottom of the swoop, but light on the left and the right. Fantastic. This shade just doesn't go for me. Not the shading of the ink, the shade of sienna. The burnt sienna, it's just not doing it for me. 19 seconds to dry. When I look at the scrubby, the extra fine, and the medium, both show me that I can expect to get some shading. The smear test says I should be able to recover this. So I looked at this on original crown mill. The only spots that it looked like it was going to bleed is where I was putting on the scrubby, and that's stupid thick spots anyway. 1.1 has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. The extra fine has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. 9 seconds to dry. Medium gets a little bit darker than the extra fine. It has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. 12 seconds to dry. The smear test shows us that both the extra fine and the medium, we don't expect to get any kind of shading in this writing. And I say smear test the scrubby. The smear test says you might be able to recover this. But again, this is a laid paper. So usually you should use it for some nicer correspondence. And you might want to, if you smear that bad, rewrite for somebody. You care about them. Black and red paper. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. It is showing some of the shading. Not stand out, jump at you shading. The extra fine. No feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. It is showing a little bit of shading. We see it in the K, which is usually a little darker. We see it get a little lighter with the U. We see the has some light into dark. Over has some light into dark, then a mid-tone and dark again. So very nice shading, even on the black and red paper. 11 seconds to dry. Medium. Medium gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, but we do get to see some shading again. It's much darker in what's happening here, definitely, but it's there. It's not lost. We get it in quick. We get it in brown. We get it in over. It's just that it's going from the darker burnt sienna to even darker burnt sienna. 13 seconds to dry. When we look at the scrubby, the extra fine doesn't show us a lot of color variation, but it does. If you look at the far left to far right, it just means it's much more gradual in its variation of what's happening. The medium doesn't show us a lot of color variation at all, even looking at the far left to far right, but we do see it in some of the writing. The smear test says I expect to be able to recover this if I smeared when I was writing, and since it's a notebook paper, that's a useful thing. That's all that I have for the writing sample.
Instead of finding inks that look like Diamine's Burnt Sienna, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I've chosen Noodler's Borealis Black because it's a nice dark black. If you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and if it's your first time here, I would invite you to subscribe. So what do I think of Diamine's Burnt Sienna? Well, siennas and umbers are among my favorite browns, and there's a lot to choose from. This one leans a little more red than I would prefer for my siennas. With that in mind, and with so many to choose from, this is not something I would go running to get a bottle of, but it is a very good ink, and if the color appeals to you, this is one that certainly should be in your collection. Thanks for watching.